Could we ever build an artificial world? If humans are going to live in an off-world habitat, then it must have the things we've evolved to depend on here on Earth. The right temperature range, breathable air, specific gravity, day-night cycles, and plenty more. But rather than gussying up a spinning, tin-can space station, wouldn't it make more sense to recreate our planet by building an artificial world? So, welcome to Techverse. We're back with another fascinating video. Today, we'll discuss whether we can ever create an artificial world that will transform everything. So without any further ado, let's jump right into the video. More from popular mechanics. Two interpretations exist for the term artificial world. The literal definition of a planet replica is a gigantic chunk of man-made rock that is virtually identical to the planets and moons created by nature. The alternative is to picture something that only resembles a world, such as a spherical space station, like the Death Star from Star Wars. Except for its shape, this second type of object would not be intrinsically planet or moon-like. However, via creative engineering, the form may follow function more quickly than you might expect. With either strategy, engineers would have a tremendous amount of work on their hands. Adam Steltzner, an engineering fellow at NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory in Pasadena, California, says, "I don't want to be a downer, but based on what we know now, the construction of an artificial planet is fraught with difficulties." That's no moon. Let's begin with the second alternative, the Death Star. In terms of scale alone, it looks more promising than creating a real clone of a planet. The first Death Star in Star Wars Episode 4 A New Hope has a diameter of 74 miles, according to the Star Wars canon. This is large, yet it pales in comparison to the almost 8,000-mile diameter of the Earth. Assuming the approximate density of an aircraft carrier, as the economics blog Incentives has done, a Death Star composed primarily of steel would weigh approximately a quadrillion tons, which is just about 1/1,000,000th of the mass of the Earth. Easy. However, getting even that quantity of material using modern mining technologies would be a ridiculous endeavor. With a global steel production rate of 1.43 billion tons per year, Incentives estimated that it would take over 800,000 years to acquire all the necessary steel. What is the price tag? An astonishing $852 quadrillion, or over 13,000 times the aggregate gross domestic output of the entire world. Worse, startup expenses. Currently, launching items from Earth's surface into space costs thousands of dollars per pound. The only realistic method for acquiring inexpensive materials is to extract them from low-gravity locations, such as the moon and asteroids. Steltzner argues that it would be more prudent to mine space than to attempt to launch a steel I-beam into space. Orbital construction site. Next, a quadrillion tons of steel must be shaped into a sphere with a complex interior structure. It would be quite challenging, but not impossible. The majority of the labor would have to be performed by robots if it were to be completed in a fair amount of time. Otherwise, you would need to hire legions of space-suited construction workers for millennia. For example, the Burj Khalifa, the tallest building in the world, has a mass of about 1,000,000 tons and was constructed over the course of 3 years by more than 10,000 workers. However, this comparison is not fully accurate, though nothing humanity has ever done really compares to building a Death Star. Despite the fact that the artificial planet would require an absurd amount of metal, it would be considerably simpler, with the correct equipment at least, to move these enormous pieces in space than in a sweltering desert plagued by gravity. Consider the interior structure as well. The Death Star consists of more than 21,000 stories stacked like office floors. This layout is impossible unless we develop artificial gravity generators to keep humans, furniture, and robots firmly attached to the floor. Gravity, the good and the bad. For long-term survival, Earth-like gravity would be absolutely required. Steltzner states, "When we don't have a single G in the Earth's gravitational constant, our bodies become completely messed up. Astronauts aboard the International Space Station must contend with concerns such as bone mass loss and low blood pressure as a result of extended microgravity exposure. Unfortunately, artificial gravity generators contravene physical laws. Instead, the artificial lunar megastructure would need to revolve along its equator to generate gravity via centrifugal force. In lieu of stacked floors, the habitat levels of an artificial moon would resemble onion layers. In an inversion of terrestrial orientation, inhabitants' heads, rather than their feet, would face down toward the center of the megastructure. Even gravity would be in reverse. Steltzner remarked, "At the heart of the construction, there is no gravity, and it increases as you move outward." Rotation itself would be straightforward to obtain. Angled rockets could spin everything up and keep it spinning at the needed pace for Earth-like gravity. Also, the rockets would not need to fire continuously. Because the structure is spinning in outer space, there is nothing to slow it down, adds Steltzner. Yet the rotation of the artificial moon introduces other issues. The sections of the construction that are subjected to 1 Earth gravity or higher must have a sufficient strength-to-weight ratio to prevent tearing. According to Steltzner, a 74-mile diameter structure constructed of steel may not be adequate. Xylon, a synthetic fiber with the best-known strength-to-weight ratio, is 7 times stronger than steel and almost twice as tough as Kevlar. Xylon is a carbon-containing organic material. Therefore, carbonaceous asteroids may be suitable mining targets using this strategy. Earth Redux. For all its engineering challenges, building our Death Star-inspired space habitat would be far easier than constructing a replica Earth. But it could never match a second Earth on one thing: stability. All of these structures or ideas for colonies suffer from one sort of inherent, substantial flaw that is summed up in a term: instability, Steltzner says. Active maintenance is needed for the environment to be maintained, like the exact right orbital parameters. They're much, much less stable than our planet. So why not just make another one? Mark Himsell is an aerospace engineer who used to work for Reaction Engines Limited and has just started his own private consulting business. In 2005, he published a study about artificial planets in the Journal of the British Interplanetary Society, which he used to edit. He wanted to see if it was possible to make a planet like Earth by geoengineering it, which would take a long time on a planet like Mars. He also wanted to see if it was possible to build a planet from scratch. Churning out a custom planet. Himsell points out that to replicate earthly conditions, you don't have to mimic Earth to a T. For example, mass and distance determine gravitational attraction. So, to get earthly surface gravity, engineers could cheat by packing just a tenth of Earth's mass, say 700 quintillion tons, into a sphere the size of the Moon, whose diameter is 2,159 miles. That's still an awful lot of rock, but Himsell explored how engineers might acquire that material and mimic nature's plant-growing, bottom-up process. Ordinarily, within a disk of leftover material around a newly formed star, molecules aggregate, bit by bit, into larger and larger chunks, and over millions of years develop into a world. To speed things up, Himsell suggested deploying a futuristic, gigantic superfusion facility near the Sun, a megastructure to make a megastructure. Using magnetic fields, the facility would harvest abundant hydrogen from the Sun's surface. Onboard fusion reactors would produce desirable heavy elements to comprise the planned faux Earth. To squish a Mars-sized mass into a Moon-sized volume, engineers would want the densest elements on the periodic table, including osmium, iridium, and platinum. Admittedly, these elements can only be made in the thermonuclear explosions of supernovae and not through conceivable garden-variety fusion machines. We're talking about some spectacular fusion technology, Himsell says, but at least the laws of known physics could still be obeyed. The facility would launch ingots of these materials out to where the artificial planet would be built up, piecemeal, as ingots collide and bind. All that ingot smashing would generate significant heat throughout the budding world, on par with the 10,000 degree Fahrenheit surface of the Sun. After a century of cooling to about 3,000 degrees Fahrenheit, ingots of crustal elements, such as silicon, could be layered on top. Another period of cooling would then need to take place, lasting about 10,000 years, until the surface would be cool enough to dump water for oceans and establishment of plant life. In summary, Himsell's paper demonstrated that world-making is best left to nature. Unless something radically different happens, says Himsell, when looking at terraforming things, the paper came to the conclusion that building your own planet is not going to be any quicker. So I think we're at the end of the video, and I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did, then give this video a thumbs up and smash that subscribe button and press the bell icon so you will never miss any updates. And if you have any questions or queries on your mind, let me know in the comment box, and also check out our channel where you'll find more really cool stuff.